Happy Monday. I'm getting ready to make dinner, but was thinking since it's been a really long day and I've got a lot on my mind that I would just make my spinach omelet while going live on video. Thing that is, first and foremost for the campaign right now. Hopefully you guys can hear me if I put you right there. Thumbs up. Yes, no. I think Jeremy, you're there. Can you hear me if I talk from here? Is that a yes? Nice. All right. Well, so it's Monday, and I've got 8 days from now before the first post-primary fundraising results go public. Well, they stop counting June 30th, and then they go public July 30th. But it's a very interesting phenomenon in politics, and not that many people really understand, the ins and outs of how it works. But essentially, how much money you raise determines whether people think you are going to win. It's, in my opinion, certainly a big problem, but been a challenge throughout this. I think we've done a really good job fundraising, but we're up against a good amount of money, and that can sometimes just sway people's decisions, whether they want to be supportive, whether they want to sit this out. That is an unfortunate part of the way political systems work until we move towards something like publicly funded elections, where candidates are working off similar sets of money so that they can reach every resident with their message, but also that it becomes a little bit more fair. If you only see me on Facebook once, twice, because that's all the money we have, and you see another candidate 50, 100 times, odds are that's going to skew your decision, regardless of whether that message is something you identify with or the candidate is the most qualified, etc. It changes what we view, and it is absolutely marketing, right? Just like any product out there, the more you see it, the more you're comfortable with it, the more likely you're going to end up purchasing that over something you've never heard of. Whether or not it's the best product out there, there's a reason companies like Apple continue to sell iPhones when they're cheap, just as functional phones on the market. They have good advertising. They show you based on those white little earbuds that someone else also thought Apple was a good phone for them to choose. And so that's kind of what we're trying to build through a campaign. You have to see that your neighbors are interested in supporting me. You have to see that other elected officials are interested in supporting me. There's all these little nuances, but at the end of the day, I could have a lot of support and not a lot of money, and it'd be really hard for the community to show that. So we are trying to make changes, especially in social media, as we move into COVID. I did a lot of door knocking in the primary. It was a way that me, the volunteers, the community that supported me, thank you all, by the way, took time out of their lives when they didn't necessarily have money to impact how the campaign's message got out there. So we're hoping there'll be an opportunity to do that at some point, but right now we want to keep everybody safe, we want to keep everybody healthy, and the background work is a lot of fundraising. I mean, hours on the phone, calling everybody I know, messaging all my friends, family, parents of kids I went to elementary school with, you name it. It's been an incredibly, humbling experience to call and have so much support. People that I know personally, people that I've never met donate to the campaign. Those things mean a lot, and that's why I'm also very excited by where we're already at. Regardless of what numbers come out June 30th for our campaign in dollars, we've had more candidates donate to this campaign than so many others for city council in San Jose. We've had, or not more candidates, more more donors donate to me. I think you guys understand. But that's another metric. I know Bernie Sanders' campaign used it a lot, right? We have X number of grassroots donors, average donation, $27, in order to build a message of support from a lot of people. But at the end of the day, having $1 from everyone versus $500 from 50 people, there's going to be a big difference in how your message gets out there. Not necessarily a big difference in support. So again, one of those challenges that we gotta fix. I'll look at comments and questions in just a second, but I'm gonna go to the fridge, get some eggs that my chickens laid, and come back and scramble it up with a little bit of spinach. It's gonna be just a minute. All right, we got onion from the garden, red pepper bought at the store. That one we don't have. Spinach, also store-bought for now. We got 2 eggs from my chickens. The white one comes from Alice, and the red one might either be Jane or Susan. I do not know, but grateful for them as well. As we get into a post-primary, right? Primary, certainly hard to get support from folks that are hesitant to see which candidate's going to come out. Maybe they like more than one person that's running. Absolutely viable, for someone to say, yeah, both of these candidates have good messages. I think they're well qualified. I'm going to sit this out. And so where we're at now is building, a coalition of folks, especially, progressives in the San Jose, South Bay area, in order to motivate people to, make phone calls, knock on doors, things that make up for not having that money. But again, if you can donate, please donate, because it does help us reach people in a way that we can't, especially right now. There's just really no substitute for having enough funds to make the campaign run smoothly. We spend money on voter software so that we can track who we're talking to and whether they're supportive. Many volunteers have jumped in and have used that software when they're knocking on doors, just so we can say, my neighbors across the street, did they like me? Did they vote for me? What questions do they have? Do I need to reach back out? All of that stuff helps us build a strong campaign, and then helps us identify how we move forward to collect what's important to the community. Right? At the end of the day, what we need to be able to do, and I'll grab a cutting board here, is understand what's on everybody's mind, how they're feeling, and that's not the knife drawer. Essentially, how they're feeling, what policy they like, what policy they don't like. I say this often enough, not always right. I think I have a lot of great ideas. I want to make sure, I'm working hard for the community, but here to learn from people as well. And I get to do that every day, talking to new neighbors, talking to new community members. So there's, a piece of that can't be substituted. We have to have, a good database, a good set of software that costs us money. Just having, one mail piece, one piece of paper going out in the mail costs, between 40 and 60 cents. Depends. Couldn't be more if you have a whole book of things. But, there's 36,000 houses in District 6. So if it's 50 cents to mail them one time, that's a lot of money. Fundraising is going really well, right? We have, a good set that will, again, I think like 60 new donors from the primary, people that stepped up, saw our momentum, are excited about the campaign. We had over 450 donors in the primary. Average donation was about 40 or 100 bucks. So we ended up raising a little more than 100. Ended up raising about $48,000, which is really great for any first-time candidate, any primary, especially someone like myself who has just kind of in the last few years gotten involved in San Jose politics more in depth. Been paying attention for quite a long time, but some people set their runs up for office years in advance. I'm going to meet these folks and work on this campaign and get involved in this organization and sit on this commission. Can't knock them. They're doing everything right at that point, but if you've got those connections, people that are plugged in, used to donating, it's only like 4% of people that ever donate to political campaigns. So a small percentage of people out there are determining which candidates are viable and which candidates are not viable in our community, right? Which is a challenge of itself. It's why, certain cities have moved towards voucher systems so that those that don't necessarily donate because they don't have the means to can weigh in, can make their candidate viable before they get to the first primary, before they get to the first fundraising period. Because people will write you off if you don't raise enough money. Regardless of how you spend it, what you do with it, people are actually way less concerned. I'll get questions every now and then, and that's, I think just a responsibility that I have. We spend, like I said, it's about 50 cents, give or take, to mail somebody once. If we mail 20,000 houses out of the 36,000 houses, it's $10,000 right there. You want to mail 3-4 times to get the community, aware just from name recognition, since you get like 7 seconds on one of those things, and then someone puts it in the recycling on average. You got to send them a few times. Not only are there total issues with that being a huge waste of money, campaigns are hundreds of thousands of dollars at this level. At the next level up, millions of dollars that we could honestly be trying to use for our community. But there is lots of need to elect the right people. And so this is a piece of it. Again, donorbox.org/Jake4D6. Please donate if you can, if you haven't already. Please help us, boost our numbers that are going to come out. We've got, like I said, 8 days left. June 30th is the cutoff period for this. And when people see that number, they will decide whether this is still a competitive race or not. Totally unfortunate, because I think, the incumbent and myself, vary on the way we see politics. Much more progressive. She's much more conservative. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a huge discrepancy in whether or not I would be qualified for this job. But people will determine that based off of the fundraising numbers I have. Thought somebody was at the door. Again, onions go first, so you can caramelize them a little bit. Adds to the omelet. Nice taste. I think I saw Olivia DeNucci, olive oil. Had a lot of that in Morocco. So I always add quite a bit more than it is maybe necessary. Sometimes it was even, Moroccan omelet is just eggs, cumin, salt, olive oil, bread. Pretty tasty though. Jeremy's asking, how much is the current D6 council member expected to spend? Hard to say. The difference, In the primary, like I said, we spent about $48,000. The incumbent in this race, she ended up spending 150 or so of what she raised, and then there were 2 independent expenditures in our race, both of them in support of the incumbent. About $50,000 from the Real Estate Association. Somebody here? I don't know. And another 10 from the San Jose Chamber PAC. So total of $210,000 on their side. On the incumbent side, we were about 50, a little less. So my expectation is it's might even be double that. It's really hard to know how much money people can throw into these races, especially with those independent expenditures. That's something, again, a lot of people don't know, but when you get a flyer in the mail for a political candidate, if it is from them, you will just see a little paid for by, candidate so-and-so for San Jose City Council. If it's not from them and it's totally legal for some other organization to send mail on behalf of one candidate or against another candidate, it'll have a little white box at the bottom and it says, X amount spent, paid for by this organization, full disclosure, there was no coordination with the political candidate. And sometimes those can make or break races. You get independent expenditures that add up to, hundreds of thousands of dollars by the end. And the candidate themselves may have done a lot to raise their own money, may have done a great job, coordinating and spending, budgeting well, reaching the right people. Both candidates might have done that. And at the end of the day, some organization with lots of money might throw their weight around. Somebody with an interest in how the race goes. And that's one of the issues we could talk about. Citizens United, right? Money is speech, corporations are people, therefore, any organization has the ability to spend unlimited amounts of money to influence a political election. We have different limits in different cases in order to try and make money not as big of an influence. Right? For my race for San Jose City Council, the max donation is $600. That's a cap per person or organization to donate directly to the candidate. What does that mean? The difference between that and an independent expenditure. Say, my mother, amazing woman, wants to help me get elected. And she is more than welcome to donate up to $600 in her name to me, the candidate, and I get to determine, or my team gets to determine how we spend that money. Now, if she was extremely wealthy, and we're fairly modest. My mom is a hospice social worker, amazing woman, constantly putting the community first. That profession does not make you millions by any means. Can you guys still hear me with the stove on? Cooking, getting a little loud. I don't see thumbs up or thumbs down, so I'll just keep talking. But say she had a lot of money, and she still wanted to support me. Thumbs up, perfect, thank you. And she wanted to continue to help me get elected. She could start what's called a PAC, right, a political action committee, and put unlimited amounts of money, 10, 100, $100,000, $1 million into that PAC. And as long as that PAC does not coordinate with me on how they are going to spend that money, she can put in as much money as she wants, right? So she's still limited to $600 for me and my campaign and what we can organize with that money, but can go out and do an independent expenditure program and give a lot more, spend a lot more. And so we all have to, regardless of whether we think that's an appropriate way for people to influence elections or not, we do need to be aware. I know some people had reached out to me and said, "Oh, I already got your flyer," right? It looks a little different than the one you're handing out, and that's because South Bay Labor Council, one of my endorsing organizations, amazing group of people. They were knocking on doors for me, and they get to go out with their own flyer that's not in coordination with me. At the bottom it says paid for by South Bay Labor Council, and it looks a little different. But sometimes people think that that's coming from me and my campaign. Same kind of thing. I know a couple of people reached out and said the incumbent changed her logo. Have you seen this one yet? And you look at the bottom, and again, the organization that paid for the mail in support of the incumbent had to pick a different logo. Obviously, they weren't coordinating with her campaign. And yet people still, it says on there in a white box, but if you're just glancing at it, you think it comes from her. This is, and though that can cause problems, it can cause confusion. Knowing that helps us determine, what sources to trust. It's just like media literacy. For news organizations, you have to be able to understand what is the source of funding for this, who's writing it, what research have they done, where did it come from. Same thing is incredibly important when voting for local candidates. We are not above having influence where people say things that aren't 100% true in order to influence an election. And they may say things that are 100% true in a different way. Some way that if, campaigns don't often go negative. Usually independent expenditures go negative to save the candidate from having to say the worst things about their opponent. But maybe there are times where the candidate has to come out and say, I think that was wrong, that shouldn't have been said, even though that might have helped them get elected. So we've got lots of issues in elections that influence what we see, who our representatives are, that are hard to tackle. Like you said, I think publicly funded elections, whether it's a voucher system, whether it's full publicly funded, whether it's a matching fund, all of those things have their place. I think they all have their benefits. They all have their critiques. But being able to decrease the influence of money in politics, I think, is absolutely important for us to move forward to a better community. Regardless of whether that community has progressive values that I identify with or not, they deserve to have a representative that covers their views, that is reaching them with the message that they care about the most, and money helps you with your outreach and your messaging. It's just the way it is. So I think as of now, we're sitting at like 275 donors post-primary, right? So it puts us up to almost 800 donations. But some people have donated a second time. Some people donate, $10, 3 or 4 times. Every dollar makes a big difference. As I said, $1 reaches 2 voters with a mail piece. As much as we don't like the waste, and I know everybody hates junk mail, is one of the surefire ways that you reach someone. You either go knock on their door, or you send them mail, because they're in the district, and in both of those cases, still may not have gotten seen. You can have a piece of mail come in between 2 magazines, and you just put them all in the trash, in the recycling, hopefully. But social media is the same way. I was talking with a friend of mine, Sean, that I've met, has reached out to me through the campaign about social media advertising. How much does it cost us to advertise on Facebook. It varies depending on how good you make your marketing, what your base is. This is why it's so important that we get, especially, residents in District 6, but people in San Jose and the South Bay. If you have more generic followers, people that will follow the campaign organically, then your outreach through paid media is going to be a little bit better. Because it does piggyback off of both. The more likes, the more comments, the more follows, the more shares you get on a post, even if you are using it as an ad, it will say at the top, it's Facebook sponsored by, in our case, Jake Tonkel for San Jose City Council. Like, comment, sharing on those things makes them go further. It tells Facebook, this is a good ad. People are happy about it, they're engaging with it. The whole Facebook algorithm, all they want to do is get people to engage more. Whether that's a good thing or not, to be determined. But if the content is engaging, you get more views for your dollar. If the content's not engaging, you put something out that's super boring that no one cares about, then you get less views for your money. Facebook, and again, I think transparency in how we run elections, how we advertise, how I'm using money that's donated to me, super important. Facebook lets you target by zip code, right? So in District 6, there are 3 main zip codes that cover the area. We've got about 65,000 people according to Facebook. There's 100,000 residents in District 6, about 75,000 that are 18 and older, about 55,000 registered voters. So if we've got 65,000 of them on Facebook in this zip code, it's a good chunk. It's a vast majority of people. And at the end of the day, we spent a few $1,000s, like almost $6,000 on social media advertising. And we were able to reach, whether it's all 65,000 people once or 3 times or 5 times, they don't really give you that data. It's all a weird guesstimate, at least from my understanding. And we were able to reach 65,000 people. So $6,000, 65,000. With $1 or with $1, you could reach about 100 people maybe. Some ads did better, but if you don't, that's like across all of our ads. If I put $6,000 into one ad, maybe that ad would reach all 65,000 people a few times. But it also, it starts out like the same people that engage most with the campaign will see the ads more often than the people that don't engage at all. Again, so if I run an ad, I pay $200 and it says 5,000 people saw it. And then I run a different ad, $200, and it says 3,000 people saw it. A good portion of those 3,000 could have also been the 5,000 that saw it before. So yes, they're getting maybe a different style ad, something they might resonate with more or less, something that gives them more information about the campaign. That's all good, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're reaching new people every time you do an ad and you get those $1,000 out or the $200 out. Checking comments for a second. Jeremy has been running some, grassroots polls. Definitely important. Polling's hard. We saw that with the 2016 presidential election. We see it all the time. They are not always accurate, but it gives you some indication on, where you are, what you're doing, what people think about you, but they can cost a lot of money. So to my knowledge, we've only had one poll in the District 6 race, and it was like October of last year. So months and months and months ago. And they actually called me. Whoever was running the poll didn't realized that they were calling one of the candidates, and they, asked me, hey, have you heard of Dev Davis? Have you heard of, Andrew Boone? Have you heard of Jake Tonkel? I'm going to read you a description of each of them. Which one are you likely to support? Fairly standard, there are people that certainly run bias polls. Now let me tell you, some negative things about one candidate and some positive things about another, and see if you change your mind. But at the end of the day, the interesting piece, I don't know who ran that poll. I asked for a manager, they said they'd connect me to somebody. Then I asked for, who's sponsoring the poll, who's running it. It's some generic, political polling of America based out of, Iowa or something. I never saw those results. So there are times where polling is used as an advantage, right? Do you know where you're standing and someone else doesn't? Certainly changes, what you might do. Are you, in a safe spot? You might want to save some money. You could relax a little bit. I don't know if someone would ever really do that, but oftentimes they're also, about viewpoints. So-and-so has done this. Is that good or bad? It's not always a public poll where people get to see, how folks are doing. But we've also seen how polls that come out early or that are skewed influence people's decisions. There's a reason that they wait to announce results on the East Coast for presidential elections while we're still voting here in California, is because if your candidate is not doing well, you may be like, damn. Well, I was going to go, but it's like 7:30 and I'm hungry, and my candidate's not going to win already. I saw that, so I'm just not going to vote. That does happen. It happens on purpose. It happens on accident. But we also have to know polls can be misrepresented. Polls, are often run by certain organizations and are not always, totally available to the public. So just kind of an interesting side note, because those cost like $9,000. And to be honest, we don't have that kind of money. So our only poll so far was the primary. Pretty good poll. I mean, for the way we take a look at it, right? We had 52% of District 6 vote for a progressive candidate. That's huge. It's there was 3 progressives, 1 conservative. Majority went to a progressive candidate. That's now, something that we really have to take advantage of. But again, we need everyone's help. Volunteers are amazing. We've been making calls to seniors, less campaign focused, more checking in, making sure they have resources. We've gotten, some masks delivered, some gloves delivered. We've gotten people connected to different resources, help navigate, how the county is changing shelter in place. Volunteers have been doing an amazing job. Thank you to everybody that might see this that's volunteering. But again, money also helps. If you can't volunteer, if you have a few extra dollars lying around, $5 helps us reach 10 more people with mail. Helps us reach maybe 500 folks, as long as we're doing our advertising well on social media. So to say, a couple dollars doesn't make a difference, it absolutely does. And I am grateful for every dollar, because it is tough out there for so many people. I totally understand when people are in a spot where I can't. Friends that have gotten laid off, friends that still have student loans, and then, might be cut hours at work. It's really challenging. But again, what that does is it gives leverage to people that are doing okay to dictate what candidates they want to see in elected office. If you're doing okay, you probably, don't necessarily need the changes that I think we need in the system. There's a lot of issues. 25% of District 6 is rent burden, paying 30% or more of their income on rent. In one of the richest cities in the country, one of the richest places in the world, we still have 6,000 people living on the street. But that's because this is not new. Money in politics has always been a problem. History class in middle school, people literally buying your vote, saying, hey, go into this polling station, you come out, I'll give you money. That does not really happen anymore. But we've transitioned into a much more subtle model. You pump money into advertising, positive, negative, etc., flood everything that people are seeing so that small candidates that may have great messages, that may be really well qualified, do not get the same kind of coverage. I've knocked on doors after knowing that I've been to a house that I've sent mail to twice. I was on TV. We did a 15-second commercial for those of you that didn't see it. Short, simple, getting money out of politics, especially, real estate developer money that floods local elections like these. And I think we always hear about, fossil fuel lobby, NRA, etc. on a congressional scale. But here, on a city level, it's a lot of what we do is land use. And so a lot of development comes into play. But, people are looking at creative ways to make that not as big of a deal as well. There's South Bay Labor Council, a couple organizations, coalition got together and did the Fair Elections Initiative. It would essentially keep people that are CEOs, executives, lobbyists that are vying for contracts from the city from donating to political candidates. Something I think is a really good path forward. We have to say there's a conflict of interest if but that's why it's like we can start to try and chip away at some of the things that are bad versus less bad, or we can tackle the problem at its core and do something like publicly funded elections. I think I saw someone mention ranked choice voting, another way where not only do we get to save money, and there's lots of other voting styles than what we use. I've had people, reach out to me and explain star voting as well. Instead of, ranked choice voting, you just mark the candidates. This is my first choice, second choice, third choice. Pretty straightforward. That eliminates spoilers. That's something that a lot of people are concerned about. Well, if I vote for so-and-so, but they can't win, then I wasted my vote. Well, if we have ranked choice voting, then that doesn't really matter. What essentially happens is if your first choice doesn't win, your vote goes to your second choice. Star voting, very similar, except you can actually give multiple ones, multiple twos, multiple threes, zeros. That one's got some nuance to it. I encourage you to check it out. Watch a YouTube video or something, because it's got some mathematical and statistical game theory type analysis to show how it produces better results than first past the post voting like we have now, or a top two like we have now. Also shortens the political cycle. I did announce this campaign in July of last year. So I've been working my full-time job and campaigning full-time, however many hours I'm awake. It's either work or campaigning, even while I'm cooking, apparently. In Morocco, when I was there, elections are 2 weeks. You can only legally hand out election information 2 weeks ahead of the election. Now, that may be really hard for grassroots candidates to get their message out there. It's definitely harder for people that are unknown. But it also encourages people, like, these are the 2 weeks out of the year that I need to sit down, do my research. It's a holiday there. We do not do that yet. Something we should absolutely do is make Election Day a holiday. Increase voter turnout. Give people the opportunity to know that engaging in politics is part of their community responsibility. It makes a big deal when people have a minute to look at a website, to call me, ask for questions. I've been asking, doing virtual door knocking for the whole COVID, shelter in place since we were done door knocking, right? By the way, spinach, onion omelet, super simple, but it's late and I'm tired. So this is all you get for now. I don't think I'm a bad cook. I can do quite a bit in the kitchen, actually, but this is definitely my staple. And we've got a lot of eggs, especially, I don't know if my mom is watching, but she went to go visit my grandma in Chicago, and since it's just her and I at home usually, both of us will have eggs for breakfast, and now it's just me, so there's more eggs around. But there's a lot of good policy out there that I think will take us in a direction that decreases the influence of money in politics. We're not there yet. We can get people engaged so that they're not even worrying about mail. I would love, it costs $3,000 to be in the election booklet. The one that gives me 200 words to talk about who I am and why you should vote for me. Not a lot of words, but it's helpful to get an idea of who somebody is, why they're running, and what their background is. It takes a lot of time to get that right, but that was $3,000. There's some candidates that don't raise that much money, and they actually get left out of the workbook. But if we had other public avenues where people got where candidates were able to equally get the same amount of coverage, I could only think that would benefit us politically. But also, you give people time, and they will, find out the candidate that actually, expresses their values. If you don't give them time, if they're working 2 jobs, trying to cover rent, pick up their kids, on election day, etc., and it takes hours. Like, I would suggest putting 1 hour into each race of research. I think you're not always going to make the exact right decision, but you're going to be very well informed. There are city council races, congressional races, state assembly races, state senate races, school board races, water district races, open space district races, other school board races. There's a lot of things. Then there's mayor sometimes, then there's president, then you got your 2, state senators. There's a lot out there, and there can be, 10 candidates sometimes, especially in the primaries, for you to do research on. If you were to put an hour into each, I think you would probably find the candidate that represents you the most, but that's a good 10, 12 hours of work. A lot of people just don't have, and honestly probably haven't seen the political process work very well anyway. I think we got a lot of discouragement. It's why the majority of people in this 44% of the U.S. population doesn't vote in the presidential election. I think that was, of registered voters, and we've got a huge number, 20% more, 25% more that aren't even registered. So there's a lot of issues with our electoral process. I think very well equipped to handle them. They're things that I'm very passionate about fixing for our community. But sometimes you can't, people that get elected on the system that exists are going to have a really hard time pushing back on that same system. Because when they go up for re-election, if I was the candidate that raised the most money by far in my race, and someone came to me and said, Jake, you're going to be up for election next year, but I would love for you to sign this bill saying you will take an equal amount of money as your opponent. I don't know why someone that wants to keep their job, that wants to get reelected, would probably not sign that, right? I'm going to go out on a limb, say I would. I think that having an equal amount of money, candidate to candidate, will show us actually who's better at budgeting. It'll show us whose message resonates and goes further. It'll leave a lot more room for volunteers, people in the community, to engage with the campaign and boost it that way. Because I really think money in politics is a huge problem. Like I said, hundreds of thousands of dollars on local races just thrown into junk mail. Billions of dollars at the presidential level could be going to the community for education, could be going to transportation, could be going to infrastructure, but there's a reason that lobby groups people spend money on lobbyists. Right? Donating to a political candidate has like a 400% return on your investment. That's much better than most things you could do as a business. So if you could hire a lobbyist or hire a second employee to improve your productivity, one makes you 400%, one makes you 30%. Which one are you going to choose? That's like a no-brainer if your only decision is, let's change some laws to make life easier, versus hire someone, work hard, be more productive, and make a better product. Not saying that that's, how it goes 100% of the time, but it's certainly an issue. That's why we see it. It's why we see billions of dollars invested into political campaigns. On a grassroots level, every dollar counts. Again, Venmo at JakeForD6, donorbox.org/JakeForD6. Message me on here. I'm sure someone can link those in the chat, in the comments section. But $1 for me helps me reach 2 people on mail, helps me reach 100 people plus on social media. That goes a long way. If we want to reach all, and again, houses versus potential voters, they overlap. Only 36,000 houses in the district, 55,000 potential voters. And then hopefully, and what we plan to do, I've got voter registration papers in my room, sitting on the floor actually, where we can go to there's 75,000 potential voters in the district, 55,000 registered voters. So we got a lot of people that we can go register them, get them engaged. That's absolutely part of the campaign plan. I think like it is for most progressive campaigns, because we know that generally it's the people that are apathetic, that aren't used to voting, that are the ones struggling with the way the system works and need to help build a coalition so that we can fix a lot of the broken aspects of it. So we go out, we register people to vote, we go out and knock on doors. Again, those kind of things boost the campaign. They save money, but we still got to reach 55,000 registered voters, and each time we send a piece of mail, it's going to cost 50 cents. 30,000 houses, send one piece of mail, $15,000 right away. That's a lot. Humbled that so many people have donated, friends, family, strangers, District 6 supporters. It's daily that I get a new District 6 resident just donating $10, $12, $15, which is amazing. I mean, it would be a very weird game if you could only take money from people in your district, in the area that you were elected from. A lot of people actually think that's the case. I'll make fundraising calls, and people will be like, I don't live in San Jose, Jake. I can't vote for you. How can I help? Well, phone bank, donate, help us with graphic design, help us with, the website. There's a lot of things to do to build a grassroots campaign. We do so much of it on volunteers. Again, thank you to all the volunteers I have. Could not do this without you guys, so I appreciate it. My eggs are getting cold, so I will leave it there. But again, please, if I can ask anything right now, we've got 7 more days till the fundraising deadline, June 30th. We could use every little bit of help, so appreciate it. For people that have questions on other things, reach out, give me a call. Again, we did virtual door knocking over the weekend, and I only had 1 email from somebody. It's kind of a strange thing where everybody loves to chat once I get to their door. Awesome. But help me save some time. If you've got questions and you're seeing this, reach out now so that we can continue to get everybody else as we get closer to election day. It's less than 5 months left. So, again, thank you. I'm going to enjoy my dinner now.